Hey guys, welcome back, or welcome to the channel. Today what are we doing? We are going to be trying to put in trunk drop-offs. Yep, these aftermarket stampings that are garbage. We're going to try to make them work. So let me flip the camera around and show you what I'm going to be struggling with on the driver's side. And then I don't even know where to start with the passenger side. So anyway, it's going to be a good time. Let's just leave it at that. A lot of cutting, a lot of welding, a lot of splicing, a lot of banging, a lot of bending, and probably a lot of swear words. Anyway, let me show you a couple of fun things we're going to run into. So here's my replacement driver's side floor pan, and here is my replacement, right, trunk drop-off. So one of the things, if you're new to the channel, we've got the wheel houses in and part of the trunk in, and this is all prepped and ready to go. But I widened my wheel wells 1 inch. All right, guys, so I threw a couple of clamps on so you can kind of see how, the trunk drop matches, the new panel. And as you can see, yeah, it's not even close. And so we're gonna have to modify that area to make it work, and then I know I'm gonna have to modify this area, and I'll show you why here in just a minute, to make it work. So this stamping, is gonna require quite a bit of adjusting. I'm not gonna modify I don't think the floor pan, because you see this, but I'm going to modify the hell out of that trunk drop-off. So let's go ahead and throw the trunk drop-off in the car so we can show you some of the problems that it's going to have. All right, guys, so this is, not, in here correctly, obviously, because I'm going to have to bend this flange something like this, a 90 degrees, so I can weld it to this, okay? And I need to get this, basically bumped up to here. So we got to move this whole thing forward. I've got a couple clamps, as you can see, holding it in. And that's what I was saying. You can see here's where I had to repair and add a couple of brackets here. Okay, so I can weld these to this panel. And then, we'll do some plug welds up here, to the top of this panel as well. One of the problems is, we got a nice big gap here. So, one of the things that I think I need to do, and I'm not 100% sure, is this here needs to kind of line up with this. Now, this car was originally a Pro Street car. So this was not the original frame. They had actually cut the frame and moved this inboard. They had the big wheel tubs in here and all that. So I've been looking at pictures online to try and figure this out. And best I can figure is this is supposed to line up with this here, okay? And then, we kind of set the floor pan in here, right? It'll contour to this, and like I said, I'm going to have to modify the floor pan to get, because it sticks over right around to here. So I need to kind of cut it so we can get this stuff to all align, all right? Which I kind of figured was going to happen. You can see here's where I widen my wheel tubs 1 inch because I want to stick a 275 Mickey Thompson in there. But anyway, yeah, we got some cutting, bending, and all kinds of stuff to do. Remember, this radius here needs to come back further so it matches the radius of the floor pan. And I also need to bend this so we can get this to here. So, yeah. So I may be cutting, this out, moving it back to get it to match the floor pan, okay? And then re-welding it and stuff. And then, anyway, because this here, I'm going to have to somehow bend it, right? Because I need to somehow bend it so it'll be tight to here. So when I go to weld it, and then I need to somehow raise it up a good, I don't even know how far that is. Anyway, quite a ways to get this up to here so we can plug weld it up here as well. And then we'll plug weld it along the bottom, So that way it'll be nice and solid. You know, we'll weld the flange here, we'll plug weld it across the bottom, we'll plug weld it, you know, on this flange, and then up here, and then, you know, these flanges here, we'll try and keep and then weld it as well. Anyway, you can see, there's been a lot of talking, but you can see what a lot of my struggles are. So let me just start banging and beating and cutting and see what we can come up with, and I'll try to give you some updates along the way. All right, guys, as you saw from the photos, hopefully you saw from the photos, you know, I've got that brace right installed. I cut across the top off of that so that way I could get it to fit, because, you know, you can see how far I'm going to cut down. That is pretty much lined up right there, and I'm not going to have to modify this area, which I'm really kind of surprised, because you can see I widened the wheel tub, you know, 1 inch. So I'm kind of shocked by that. Anyway, these line up perfectly where they're supposed to, you know, from underneath. And, you know, yes, I'm going to have to figure out where to trim this and then, you know, weld it across, and then we'll do some plug welds here. You know, and I may actually do the plug welds from the back side. So that way I don't have to do any grinding or anything. Because if you notice my pieces here, right, they're already all drilled. And I believe these are OEM GM parts. These are not reproduction parts. The person I bought the car from, you know, bought parts from 37, 40 years ago, and bought GM parts because this tail panel was replaced. It had a sticker for a GM part. So I'm assuming these are factory GM parts. Now, I don't know if he hole punched these or if they came hole punched, but looks like I'll be doing a bunch of upside down welding. So that way, you know, we don't see, you know, maybe we'll just see a few grind marks, but we may have a nice clean floor pan when we're done and just run a little bead of seam sealer and cover it all up. This is why I didn't want to hack up the floor pan to match this piece. I'd rather hack up this piece, which you'll never see underneath the car unless you're under the car, to make it fit, you know, and so to support this structure over here. So this floor pan actually fits really good. I'm really happy with it. So anyway, let's jump into modifying that, because the floor pans will be probably a separate video. All right, guys, so ran into a snag. So what I decided to do, as you saw from the pictures, there were some big gaps when I just set this floor pan in there, you know, to the trunk drop off there. And so I was trying to figure out what I'm going to do about this last night. And I said, you know, I'm going to call it quits. Come back out here fresh today. And so what I decided to do is I put this pan in there, and it is all clamped up. You know, I couldn't really clamp it here. I could get some Clecos and put a few Clecos in here, you know, and kind of push this down a little bit more, but she is pretty much where it's going to be. I'll show you underneath, you know, I've got actually some more clamps as well. But she's pretty well clamped up, you know, to that piece there. It's pushed all the way down tight. It's not all the way tight up there because, you know, of that panel. You know, I've tried to squeeze this panel in between the wheelhouse and that panel just to kind of get it down a little bit. I suppose if I were to whack it a little bit, I could, but then I might have a hard time getting it back out. But let's crawl underneath and I'll show you now what the gap looks like from before with the photos. And I saw somebody else's video, and I think that's the route I'm going to need to go. Not so much in this area, more back here. And I'll explain here in a minute, I think, what I need to do. Let me crawl into the car. All right, guys, so as you can see, we've got quite a gap, you know, here, and obviously a big gap here. You know, because from what I can figure out from looking at some online photos, you know, is this is supposed to be kind of welded along the bottom of the quarter and then go up. But like somebody else, you know, the other person's video I kind of watched, is these are probably like Chevelle Malibu parts that they're just stamping and saying GTO because they're nowhere near close where they need to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to unclamp all of this and basically put this all the way up to here. I may have to form this metal, shape this metal a little bit. And then, you know, I'll stick maybe a screw in here to hold it in place temporarily. And what basically they did is they kind of cut straight down here. And then they flipped this up so then it was tight to here. And then, you know, you could plug weld it from the top side into this metal and get a good, nice fit. And then, you know, you can do your plug welds here and here, you know, to also support this. But then you have this big, basically V, okay, that you're going to have to weld in some new sheet metal to get this piece to work the way it should. And then, you know, I got to figure out how I'm going to basically weld this to this bottom lip down here so it's nice and tight. I may have to weld some additional material down here to get that to work. So anyway, let me take a bunch of pictures, you know, as we go through this process, and hopefully it will help you out if you have to go this route. Because this is definitely not a plug and play part, that is for sure. Well, guys, I know I said pictures, but after a lot of frustration, we were able to put in a screw here to kind of suck this out. And then I was able to put clamps up on top, you know, to clamp this up to the floor pan now. And we're not doing too bad. You can see I'm going to have to redo up here because we've got a nice big finger width. And then we've got about a finger width here, so I can flatten this out and then reshape this so that we'll have something to weld to here. Here, I just may go ahead and, you know, just make a new piece here and put it in so we've got a nice tight fit there and we can plug weld all that good. But one issue you can see, right, we're nice fit here, but as we come back, you can see the gap gets wider and wider and wider, you know, to where it's, I don't know, good 3/4 of an inch or so wide here, you know, and it narrows up to here. So we're going to have to probably add a strip here so that we can weld to this flange down here, you know, plug weld it real good. And, you know, so we've got a nice fit. You can see what I'm talking about, maybe a little better there, okay? And then we still need to address this up here because it's not, you can see I got a big finger gap, but it's tight here, it's wide there. So this is where I'm going to go ahead and cut, like right here, move it up so that it'll be tight here, and then we'll do a filler piece in here. So I'm going to leave this all clamped up for right now. We're going to cut that. I'll show you it, move it out, weld that back up, or at least tack it. And then, you know, I'll figure out what I'm going to do here. And then we'll have to try to put this whole thing back in and fit it up. you know, so that way we can say, yes, we got the trunk chop in here. But you can see, you know, guys, this is not a plug and play part. You're gonna have to do quite a bit of modification as well. But I will say, putting in the trunk pan, you know, helped a lot to me figure out what I need to do. All right, guys, so I've got a clamp up here now. So that is sucked up tight to the body where I can, you know, do some plug welds up there. And then once we do some seam sealer, you know, you'll never know. And then you can see here is that where I need to go ahead and create a little sliver and weld that in. So then, you know, we have plenty of material here to clamp to and weld, you know, some plug welds to the body. We'll have to trim it a little bit there, you know, and then like I said, I still need to add some down here. But then once we get this done here, then I'll have to take this whole thing out. You know, we can add some material there, and then I got to go up to that corner and figure out how I'm going to, you know, redo it. So then we can get it welded up, you know, to the front there and also to the, you know, the wheelhouse. So we'll have to redo that area. So anyway, overall though, guys, it's nice and tight to the, you know, to the trunk panel there. You know, we just got to do some few modifications. I'm actually really happy the way this is turning out. You know, the mods aren't going to be too bad. Once we get it all welded in, this structure will be nice and solid. So before we do any welding, we'll have to primer these panels and paint them and stuff, you know, weld where I'm going to put weld through primer, where I'm going to weld, you know, put primer, some etching primer on the back side there and on the panel and stuff before we actually weld them all up. So anyway, let's get them to fit and then we'll worry about the primer and all the other stuff. All right, guys, so we've got this all tacked up as you saw in the picture a second ago. You know, we've added material here. We added all that material down here. So now, you know, you can see we've got a nice flange that we can actually weld to the bottom of the quarter panel here all the way across. Once we get it ground down and welded up for good. I do need to improve a little spot right there. Now there's a bigger gap there because the clamp just popped loose. But I need to improve that little area right there. And then, oops, get my finger out of the way. You know, we still have a gap up there, as you can see right here. You know, this gap. So what I'm gonna do is cut these couple welds. I'm gonna tilt it upward and then do a little filler piece in here. And that very top there, I'm gonna weld a little piece and kind of roll it over, if that makes sense. So that way, you know, it'll be nice and tight to the floor pan here. And then I need to redo these flanges a little bit. But we're real close. Just a couple more little changes here, you know, a minor change there, and then, you know, finish welding and grinding and all that. And this panel will be done. So it's really turning out better than I thought it would when I first put it in here. It's a lot of work, guys. This is an area of the car, you know, you'll never really see unless you crawl under here and look. I'll probably be doing, you know, what's that stuff called? Anyway, like the bed liner stuff under here. So you'll never see any of this. But to me, at least it'll be solid. And, you know, when we weld this thing up, you know, this car is not going to go anywhere. She'll be, like I said, you know, she'll be solid. And that's one of the reasons why, guys, I've got the car bolted to the frame here. So when I do all this right, the car will bolt right back onto the frame. So let's finish up these modifications and I'll show you the finished piece on this side. All right, guys, here's the fit. So it's not all clamped up on top. It's just got, one clamp here on the bottom and, the one screw kind of holding it in place. And I think I've got 2 or 3 clamps on top. And she's pretty darn good. I just have a little bit of fitment to do right there in the corner. And I have to do a little adjusting back here. But other than that, this piece is done. Let me take it out and I'll kind of walk you through what we had to do to get it to fit, all the modifications I need to make at least to fit my car. You'll have to do this on your own and see what you have to do, but this is what I had to do. All right, guys, so what I tried to do is add a little bump there, because of the way the body is shaped. You see I had to pie cut this and spread it out so we could turn this up. So this would fit along the back side of the body. I had to add an additional section here because otherwise it was riding too high up to the lower quarter panel. And then, as you see here, right, I basically had to add metal here to kind of go across the top so we could clamp it up to the floor pan. And then I had to extend this out, and then weld some material in here to kind of fill in the gaps. So here, like I said, you can see where it kind of goes up and over. We filled in some additional metal here. We added some more metal. I actually had to slice this and pie cut it to tilt it up as well to fit to the floor pan and weld in a little piece there. So that's all the modifications, guys, we had to make to get this fit. Now I need to go ahead and weld all this up, make a small adjustment there, make a small adjustment there. And I will make a small adjustment here on the floor pan to get, because I like how this actually fits to the quarter panel. To the wheelhouse. And so, I'll make a small adjustment to the floor pan to fit this area. But there you guys go. Everything we had to do to make this thing fit and work. So let me go ahead and weld it up and clamp it in place, hopefully for one of the final times, and we can get ready to weld it in once we primer it all up and stuff. And then what I'll do is I'm just going to go ahead and do this one real fast, guys, and I will show you what I had to do to this one in the end. I have a feeling I don't know if it's going to be similar or not, but we'll see what we got to do here, and I'll show you it in the end. All right, guys, so we have the driver's side done. Like the passenger side, I did need to slide this way a little bit, like 3/8 of an inch. So we got a nice tight fit up here in the corner. I did not have to adjust the flange on this side, which was interesting, compared to the other side where I had to really adjust it, and add more material so I could weld to the flange. Now, just like the other side, I did have to, oops, get my light back over here. Just like the other side. There we go. Oh. Get my light back here. Got to tighten it up. All right, just like the other side, I did have to add this pie cut. I did have to add more material in this area as well, so I could, do some plug welds to the flange or to the quarter panel. I did have to add this flange here. So basically I had to flatten out the flange that they gave me and add a flange on this side. Now, one thing too, though, guys, is, when I fit this floor pan in, I did have to cut some material out in this area, about 1/4 of an inch, because this area here was not lining up at all with the mark. So I had to cut a 1/4 inch out, and I went ahead and did that now so that way I could slide it over. And so you can see as we clamp this up, we had a nice tight fit here as well. So you may need to adjust your floor pan slightly to kind of get the fit you need. So what I did is I cut right down through here, and brought it, I think, right about here. And then I cut, like I said, about 1/4 of an inch out, tack welded it back in, and I'll have to do a bunch of finish welding here shortly. The other thing I needed to do is a little hammer dolly work in this area, because it was a pretty good gap. I could stick my finger down in there. So I did some hammer dolly work and, got it to have a nice tight fit to this curve. And, you know, that way when we go to weld everything, you know, we'll have nice tight fits. And then, you know, once we fill this all in the seam sealer, you'll really never know anyway. And then you can see here that, you know, all the clamps. And I just need to trim a little bit of this outside material off. You know, then we'll do our plug welds along this edge when we get to that point. Now, one thing, guys, is I did not put in these new quarter panel lower pieces on. The previous owner had done that. And so I compared side to side. I took measurements from kind of the very top of the quarter panel all the way down, you know, to the different various body lines here. Okay, and just made sure they were actually the same length, you know, from side to side using a fabric tape, you know, so it'll lay nice and flat. So this is a fabric tape right here, what I'm talking about. So that way, you know, it's, when we go to lay it on here, right, I can contour it to the panel and take the measurement. So I measured, you know, in multiple spots, both sides, and both sides, like I said, all the body lines checked out good. The only difference I can really see is at the very bottom flange where, you know, it goes underneath is where the difference can be. And there's about 1/4 of an inch difference from one side to the other. So with that said, that's the only thing I can contribute to these being so different. You know, this car was originally going to be, the original owner started to Pro Street it. They had a different frame under it. You know, I've got basically a stock frame back under it. You know, I did widen the wheel tubs, as you saw in the previous video, you know, but we're kind of putting it back to somewhat stock compared to what it was. So there's been a lot of work, you know, a lot of sheet metal work to this car, so I can get it back to the best I can. You know, I'm an amateur body guy. All right, guys, so the next part is going to be one last fit up of both sides to make sure I'm happy with everything. And then we will go ahead and remove the floor pans out of the way. We will clean up all the metal. We'll do the weld through primer everywhere. We'll do the weld through primer on both panels here, get them all primed up, because once they're in there, you know, you're not going to be able to paint. So we'll paint part way up the quarter panel with primer on both sides. You know, we'll clean up, you know, hit everything with paint on the quarter panel the wheelhouse, for example. Probably a little bit of paint in the quarter panel so far up. You know, we'll do all that prep next. Then we'll set the floor pans back in place, and then we will clamp these all up and buzz them in. And then in the next video, we will take care of the floor pans and put in all these other braces and stuff. And there we have it, guys. Trunk troughs all welded in. You know, I don't know if I did them right. You know, I don't know if a combination of whoever replaced the previous lower quarter skins, a combination of, you know, this rear tail light panel, the combination of stampings, you know, for the lower, or for the trunk trough drop-offs. You know, I'm sure it was a combination of things. I probably, you know, hacked them up a little bit too, but you know, we got them in there. I did fit up the rear bumper, and it does fit in there pretty good. I tried to take a bunch of measurements, and everything seems to be square. You know, when I put in, as you guys saw, the trunk pans, you know what I mean? They seem to match up and go in there well. So hopefully we did this right. If nothing else, you learned, you know, maybe what not to do. or at least I gave you something that you can take and kind of go, okay, yeah, I need to do this or that, you know, and make it work for me. Anyway, guys, this car, you know, as you saw, I think in the very beginning, you know, was a Pro Street car, and, you know, was not the original frame. You know, this is a different frame. It's a factory frame. It's from a Buick, not from a GTO. You know, the wheel houses are the factory wheel houses from a Lemans there, you know, in there. The, you know, the one center pan, you know, for the trunk is from the Lemans. So that's a factory piece, just trimmed down a little bit because of the 1-inch wide wheel tubs. You know, anyway, we tried to do our best. Hopefully this helps you guys kind of figure out what you got to do, you know, to get these things in there and get them to work. Because like I said, I didn't want, you know, it could be a combination too of the stampings of the trunk pans a little bit, right? So, you know, a myriad of things, kind of, you know, different companies, different stampings, just trying to make this all match and work, I guess. Anyway, it's together except for the pans, which is next. So stick around for the next video if you want to, and trust me, I appreciate everyone, you know, watching. We'll get the braces in there, we'll get the pans in there, and, you know, weld stuff up, and, you know, then the rear structure will be all sound, and then we can go to the roof. But I got to do a couple things with the dart before we can go to the roof. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys.